Hello, my darlings. Have I got a tale for you? Yes, it's Sunday, 13th. I just had to check that, 13th of April. Wow, I have just finished John Halkin's Slither. Right, this one from 1980, and this is an original 1980 copy, 95p when it was first sold. No, I did not pay that. I paid £25 for this little beauty, right? And it's been well read, but still very nice, still very tight, very nice novel. Oh my goodness me, when killer sewer worms attack. Yeah, this one came out in 1980. I'll tell you a little bit about John Halkin. His real name is John Parry, and he was born in 1927 in Liverpool. So I think he died in 2020. I think he passed away then, but I can't be sure because I can't corroborate on it. But I have looked it up and I've tried to find out as much as I can about John Halkin or John Parry. I know he worked for the BBC and he was a writer and a producer for the radio. So that's about as much as I can tell you because there's really not a lot on the internet about John Parry, John Halkin. I'll call him John Halkin because that's his name on his book. But yeah, there's not a lot about the gentleman, but what he left us was an absolute treasure trove. Honestly, this is so much fun. It's splatterpunk, of course. It's a slaughterfest. It is glorious, gory fun. I love it. I absolutely loved this book. Written, as I say, in 1980, in the vein of James Herbert's The Rats, but rather than it being rats in the sewers, we've got sewer worms in the sewers, ranging from teeny tiny Newt. That's why we call him Tiny, because he's minute. I just had to get that joke in. It's an oldie but a goodie. But yes, I thought the teeny tiny little sewer worms right up to the behemoth. Think the worms of Arrakis in June in the form of a leech slug newt thing. Yeah. And they're living in the sewers of London. Yeah, I know. They're absolutely horrendous. They're awful things. And if you had a fear of going down in the sewers of London, you are never going to go in the sewers of London because of these things. Now, we meet our main protagonist, Matt Parker. He works for the BBC, he's a cameraman, he's down in the sewers, he's filming for a documentary that they're doing. He happens to notice these things swimming towards him, and he doesn't understand or know what they are. He's going to get a very quick lesson in evolutionary biology of who comes out top dog is the one that survives. He face plants in the sewer because he slips because it's slippery, lands in the effluent, the worms come over, they have a good time, eat two of his fingers, chew off most of his bits around his face, he's screaming and begging for help, he passes out, the cameramen that he's down there with find him, but they don't rescue him until they've got a little bit of filming of him face down in the water with the worms eating him. And then they think, oh, it might be a really good idea to phone for an ambulance. So they rescue him and wheel him off in the back of an ambulance to the local hospital. And he comes round and he thinks, oh no, What are people going to think? Am I going to look like a mutant? What? Looks down at his hands, realizes two of his fingers are missing, and thinks, oh no, what's my wife going to think about me? What's my daughter going to think about me? Here we go. We meet Helen, his wife, Helen Parker, and Jenny Parker, his daughter, his 10-year-old daughter. And they sort of like, well, it's okay, Matt. So you got a bit of your face missing, you got two fingers missing, doesn't matter, you know. His wife Helen is like, I'm not really right bothered if he lives or dies, you know. She's really uninterested in a marriage. Obviously, they're having marital problems. However, they go to see the daddy, Matt, her husband. They say, oh, everything's fine. Take the bandages off. He goes, yep, everything's cool. And off he trots back home, back to normality. There is a bit of a frenzy over the attack in the worms, eating him in the sewers. And everybody is like really interested in it at first, and then that suddenly dies off. And the interest in the story of the worms goes away. Matt's like, but there's massive worms, they're living in the sewers, they might eat you all. Why are you not interested? He tries to get the BBC to do a documentary about it. The BBC don't want to know. Somebody sends a box of worms to the Director General, and she opens the package on her desk, and the worms jump out and attach themselves to her chest and her neck and her boobs, and they end up ripping her dress off to rescue her from these worms. And she's like, has a mental breakdown over it and says, I don't want to work here anymore, I'm taking early retirement, and off she trots. The next person to take her job is a guy called Aubrey Morgan, who's a bit of a dick, if I must say, and has an air of pomposity about him that is off the scale. We will come back to Aubrey Morgan later on in the book, because he will get his comeuppance. He will. Oh yes. And it's a good one. So let me tell you a little bit about what happens to Matt. Matt decides that he's obsessed with the worms, basically, and he's going to go back down into the sewers and do some more filming, and he will get them to make a documentary about this. And while he's down in the sewers, he decides to kill a couple and puts them in an ice box, an ice cooler, and takes them home with him. It so happens that Matt and Helen have a little cottage at a place called Westport at the seaside, and they decide that they're going to go down for the weekend, and Matt takes these dead worms with him because he wants to have a good look at them in his garden shed while he's got the time over the weekend. And Helen doesn't know that he's taking these worms with him, right? So he takes them down and he's in his shed, and she opens the shed door. She sees the worm. She starts screaming and she goes, that's it. I am phoning the doctor. You've gone off the deep end, Matt. You've gone insane. And he went, well, no, I haven't. It's just that I wanted to know what it was that chewed my face off. And so he decides at that point that it'd be a really good idea to skin these worms and see if he could find somebody who he could perhaps get them to make them into a belt, because the skins are really beautiful. They're luminescent, they're vermilion, they are jade green, they're beautiful haze of blue, they're every colour you could imagine that would make them so gorgeous. And he so happens to find a young lady in Westport that owns a gift shop called Frances I wrote her name down, Frances White. And he says to her, I see that you can make handbags and gifts and stuff like that. Can you do anything with these skins? And she looks at them and she goes, oh, they're beautiful. Where did you get them? And he goes, oh, don't worry about that. He says, can you work anything out? She goes, I can turn it into a belt, I can turn it into a purse, I can do a handbag. If you can get me all the skins that you can, I will turn these into beautiful leather luxury goods. And he went, well, fantastic. See if you can get selling them at Liberty's and Harrods. And because obviously that's the superstores of the time back in the 80s. Everybody wanted to be in Harrods and Liberty's. And she turned around and goes, absolutely not a problem. Just get me as many skins as you can. And they're going to business together there and then, 50-50, and decide that they're going to make an awful lot of money, right? So some good was going to come out of the fact that he was munched and crunched by these sewer worms, and he was going to go down into the sewers, catch him, kill him, skin him, and turn him into luxury leather goods. Can't see anything going wrong with that, can you? Absolutely not. I know, exactly. Anyway, from there, he ends up having a very hot and steamy affair with Fran. Yeah, things ain't going so well with Helen. He's trying his luck with Fran. Okay, so bearing in mind, this time skips by and people are disappearing. They are sewer worm food. The kill count is off the scale in this book. You know, we're not talking in the hundreds, we're talking in the thousands. People are being munched left, right, and centre. Britain is under attack from sewer worms, but they're all male. Where? There must be a queen somewhere. Think alien. Think that size of worm, right? But where? Where could old Queenie Bobs be hiding in the United Kingdom? North Yorkshire Moors? Possibly. Dartmoor? Probably. I don't know, but we'll have a good look round and see if we can find her. So they start looking for good old Queenie Bobs or Queenie Bobettes, because there could be more. Because there can't just be one queen, right? No, there's a whole colony of them. Honestly, think Arrakis, Dune, the worms, and leeches, and then that's the size of your queen worms, right? They're like an ant colony. You got your worker ants, your soldier ants, and then you got your queen ant. And that's the same with these sewer worms. That's their hierarchy, if you will. People are just being munched and crunched across Britain and nobody is making the connection. Absolutely no one at all. And things get to a point where they got the sewer extermination team that go down. All right, I've written down, get your bingo cards out, because here are some of the more notable kills. Yes. We have 22 chapters of 215 pages of gory, gruesome slaughter kills. Oh yes, it's just so juicy. It is. Your notable kills on your bingo card. The swimming pool party where the guests are the main course. The two young lovers finding a place to party. Maybe not the local caves kids, because you find it's full of them. It really is, and they're gonna eat your bits. Absolutely. The drunk tramp who falls into a nest in London Park. Late one night. The extermination team that go into the sewers of London to kill the sewer worms and end up being killed by the sewer worms. The two lads that are the skinheads, you know, the total thugs that run around London, granny bag snatchers. I think that's the thing they were going for. going through their loot on a rubbish heap in London, and they are besieged by sewer worms, and they are lunch, and they are then no more. Aubrey Morgan, I told you about him. He went to a engagement party, met a floozy, decided that they needed to go outside and get some air. And oh, what a beautiful romantic night. The moon is high in the sky. Let's go over there to those quiet ruins of this old religious church from yonder years. Yes, let's get our rocks off down there. Oh, perhaps they shouldn't have. Naughty, naughty. No ding ding before they ring. And they are munched alive while having a cuddle and intense kissing. Oh, yes. They are munched and crunched. I see. That's what you do. You don't go nutty nutties, or you will be munchy munchied. Yes. Oh, and one of the other really good kills is Helen, Matt's wife. Well, Matt's off in London bonking Franny Bobs. Yes, poor Helen's having a shower, and she looks down the plug hole. Naughty, naughty Helen. Shouldn't have done that. And anyway, a team of thousands of these little buggers crawl out of the plug hole and eat our Helen. Helen's daughter, Jenny, comes home from a party that she'd been to. Bearing in mind this child's 10 years old, right? Bear that in mind. She comes in, calls for her mother, finds the lights on, hears the water running in the bathroom upstairs, runs upstairs to say, Mummy, I've had the most wonderful time at a party, and then looks and her mother is in pieces all over the bath with these effing big worms eating her mother. I mean, she's not going to say, darling, I'm so glad you had such a fabulous time. Where's your party bag? No, Mom is gone. She's dead on the floor, being eaten by these giant fucking worms. They're just so massive. And then more pouring out from the plug hole. And so poor Jenny turns the shower off, closes the bathroom door, trots downstairs, phones her father at the hotel that he's staying at in London, because he'd gone to London with Fran to talk to the owners of Macy's department store in New York, and he wanted to buy the leather goods that they've been making out of these worm skins. And she manages to get through to the hotel room where her dad's supposedly staying, and he's not in his room. So she phones Fran's room and speaks to her dad, and she goes, Hello, Daddy. So, I hope you've enjoyed having sex with Fran. Mummy's dead. She was eaten by the worms. Goodbye. And that's the end of the conversation. Matt's thinking, I'm an absolute piece of work. Here I am, bonking Fran, and my wife's been eaten alive by the worms back in Westport, and my poor daughter's there all alone. Panic, panic, panic. He phones the local solicitor that his wife was working for and begs him to go around to the house to rescue his daughter and to phone the police so that they can go in and sort out the worms and kill the worms so his daughter will be safe. Meanwhile, he gets dressed, Fran gets dressed, and they go rushing off down the motorway back to Westport. And that's when holy hell breaks loose, because the entire village coastal village of Westport is now being inundated by the munchy, crunchy crew. And here they are, then they're not going to stop until they've eaten absolutely everything they can get their little snappy jaws round. They chew the lot. They eat pigs, cows, sheep, cats, dogs, birds, seagulls, fish, people, old people, young people, kids, you name it. It just goes on and on and on. There's not anything, if it ain't nailed down, it's eaten by these flaming worms. And to make matters worse, they blame Matt because they think Matt brought the worms to the village because he's breeding. Well, he can't breed them because they can't find a female. So all he's got are males, and he keeps getting them as they're really tiny and fattening them up, and then bringing them out, bonking them overhead, skinning them, and turning them into purses. Right? A sudden dawning for Fran and Matt is when they realise that all the things that they've made and at this point sold as luxury leather items, all the women across Britain that own them are now in danger because it seems that there is a collective intelligence that the worms will not leave any of their fallen brothers behind. They will eat the skins. So now if there was a woman in Britain wearing one of these rather trendy belts, she's worm food, right? So they just suddenly realise that the business plan that they had is now out the window. It's gone, done, finito. It'll just never work. And they realise that all the women that now own their luxury leather goods are now prime meat targets for these worms. Honestly, it's so mental, is this story. It's absolutely, dare I say, balls to the wall, slaughterfest from start to finish. You are gonna love this book. I know it's of its time. It's the 1980s. It's misogynistic. The viewpoint of women is quite poor where the men are concerned. But I say, one of the things that was nostalgic for me was pound notes being used to buy 2 pints of best bitter at the Crown pub in London, right? When was the last time a quid bought you 2 pints? And that dates it, doesn't it? One of my most favourite kills in all of this book happens to be the Oxford-Cambridge boat race, of which I have to tell you, it's just hysterical. I'm just going to read you a little bit. Looks like a periscope, Bill Hayes, the director who was also doing the vision mixing, held his fingers poised above the buttons, ready to punch it up to transmission. 2 of them. Stay with them, Aubrey instructed. The great British public could not see them yet. The transmission monitor still showed the Cambridge boat. Their rate of stroke had faltered as the crew, all but the cocks, saw their Oxford rivals heading straight for the giant worms. Aubrey was calm and fully in control of himself. He waited as the Oxford boat entered the frame, cutting through the water towards the worms, before giving his command, "Okay, let the world see it." The worms seemed to rise out of the water and throw themselves across the boat, each curling around its chosen victim. The long oars, which only seconds before had been gracefully and rhythmically dipping in and out of the water in unison, were now in disarray like split matchsticks. Even on the small monitors in the OB van, it was obvious the worms were making no attempts to kill their victims, but were tearing off mouthfuls of raw flesh from their thighs and arms. Bill stumbled out of the director's seat, his face ashen, and staggered to the door of the van to be sick outside. Aubrey slipped into his place. He told the helicopter to get as low as possible over the scene. The flotilla of boats, which always followed the race, were obscuring the sightlines. The Oxford boat had sunk, and the men were struggling in the water, but Barnes' bridge camera only caught the occasional glimpse of them. He cut to the commentator on one of the launches with the order, "Keep talking. Tell us what's happening, however sick you feel." The camera on board the helicopter showed two men jumping into the water from the launch to help the Oxford crew. One died immediately as a worm bit into his throat. The blood spread around him, but the second managed to offer some assistance to the cox. Dick Simmons and another Aubrey couldn't recognise. "And they were being pulled on board now," the commentator was saying. "And I think yes, it's Phil Smith and the cox, Dick Simmons. I'll see if I can have a word with them later on. But in the meantime, down there in the river, there are at least 4 men still alive. The water is stained with blood, and the worms, 3 of them now, or 4, maybe yes, I think it's 4 worms, are feeding on the bodies of those unfortunate crew members. The Oxford crew, and this is the boat race, which has ended in total disaster. And I can't go on." Does that not whet your appetite? The ending is fabulous. It's on Dartmoor. It involves several queen worms. And does Matt survive? Does anybody survive? Do any of the worms survive? Is there going to be a sequel? It is the first in the trilogy that John Halkin wrote. 1980 was Slither. Slime came in 1984. That was Jellyfish. And Squelch in 1985. And those were caterpillars. I am on the hunt for Slime and Squelch because I just need these in my life. I have never enjoyed a creepy crawly critter book from hell as much as John Halkin's Slither. And Slither was amazing, so I can only imagine Slime and Squelch are even better. But I shall be on the lookout for them. I really hope you've enjoyed this bonkers book review. Slither, it's got to be on your TBR. You have to read. It's a little diamond. It's an absolute gem of a horror story. It's such a short read, and it's so full of the most bonkers kills that you could ever imagine in a horror book. I loved it. I give it 5 out of 5 worms, and I'm sure you are going to absolutely love it as much as I did. And you'll just have to let me know if you actually do decide to read this glorious, gory little number. You won't regret it. It is absolutely fantastic. From his first terrifying bloody encounter with them, Matt Parker knew they were lethal to the human race. Out of the murky sewers they suddenly attacked, snapping, biting, ripping at his flesh. After the first sensationalism had died down, the newspapers lost interest. The experts dismissed them as no more dangerous than ferrets. People started to forget, but Matt knew different. All the time they were growing in size and numbers, and they preyed on living flesh. For when they returned, slithering out of the village ponds, swimming pools, and even bath pipes, the fate of the British population was sealed, and there was no more horrifying way to die. Do enjoy, my darlings. Happy readings and enjoy. If you you like what I do, give me a thumbs up. And if you really like what I do, you can always give me a follow. Bye bye.